with the roll call and determination of a quorum. Here. Okay, up next we have the adoption of agenda. Does anybody have any additions to the agenda or anything they'd like to remove? Not appearing, to entertain a motion. Motion by Peterson, second by Wright to adopt the agenda. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Okay, general public comment. Now is the time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken on the meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement of the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. Do I have anybody wishes to speak on any item not on the agenda? I do not currently have any speaker request forms. I'm just going to take a quick moment for myself here, just in case you wonder what this is all about. I had a ski accident this weekend and I was wearing a helmet, so that's the reason I'm still here probably. So make sure you wear your helmets and make sure you put your kids' helmets on, because I ended up in the hospital and it's not a good thing. So I know we all grew up in the age where we didn't have helmets, but definitely a good idea. Anyway, no, the mayor didn't do this to me. So, okay, moving on next to consent items 1 through 4. Now we're going to open public comment on items 1 through 4. Anybody have no speaker request forms for those items? Does anybody wish to speak on those items? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment on items 1 through 4, and I would entertain them. Look to the council to see if anybody wants to remove anything. No lights. Entertain a motion to adopt. First, second by, wow, pardon me, folks, more of a loopy. Motion by Laurenti, second by Doyle for adoption of the items 1 through 4. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Okay, moving on to non-consent items numbers 5 through 11. Now we're going to open public comment on those items. And I'll first go to number 5. Number 5, Mr. Dennis Halterman. Sir, you have 3 minutes. When it turns yellow, you have 30 seconds. Please introduce yourself for the record. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alderman. Dennis Halterman. I'm a business owner downtown, the Factory Salon. You know, here's the thing I'd like to say. I guess I've been thinking about this in our continued meetings. I still don't understand now why we're even talking about shutting down roads and hurting downtown businesses to have this event. You know, Mr. Brooks admitted that there was these 12 locations that moved it out of their downtown area, that it just simply wasn't working. And he defies logic then to say the party's a good time, but it also hurts some of the primary stakeholders. And we've heard from a lot of the stakeholders downtown that are, again, it's February, we're down there doing business, why we should be talking about the people that anchor it year round to have these problems. I don't know. But, you know, and then there's talk about moving it up to 9th Street and moving it around, and there was a couple of business owners, mostly bars up that way, that seemed to like that idea, but I happen to run into a business owner that doesn't own a bar in the grocery store, and he wasn't for it going up there, and it all comes back to this shutting down of roads. So here's what I don't understand, why it's necessary to shut down the roads to do this. Here's what we could do, and this is simple, and this is a solution that wins for everybody. We just get rid of the idea of blocking down roads and doing the party in the middle of the roads for summer nights. We continue to call it Summer Nights Downtown on Thursdays. We invite the entire community, 10, 15, 20, 50,000 people down. But instead of blocking our roads and making it difficult for us to be able to do business, they're now on the sidewalks. And now they're starting to go into the businesses that everybody wants them to go into. Now they have the opportunity to walk into the bars and restaurants that seem to benefit from this, some of them, not all of them. But as well, maybe the retail shops would want to stay open, but it won't take away the business all day long. So this is a really simple solution. It's just a matter of not shutting down the roads. It doesn't change anything. We still have summer nights downtown. We have Main Street Square. Main Street Square will do fantastic with it. They execute stuff in an excellent way. I'm sure Art Alley will continue to get busy, and it'll have kind of an organic mix and growth. But instead of harming, we just keep the good and get rid of the bad. So I understand that there's been talk about blocking off Main Street. I'd ask you to not make that decision, but rather let's get rid of this blocking off of roads, make it a win-win. Keep it summer nights downtown, but don't cause harm to some because the bars do good and because the Summer Nights organization makes money at it. Let's make it again for downtown, which is what we wanted it to be all along, and not punish the people that do business down there 12 months out of the year. So I'll thank you for that consideration, and I appreciate your time. Thanks much. Sorry about the deal there, Chad. It looks bad.
Thank you, Mr. Alderman. No, I'm fine. I'm married. I can take it. Okay, up next, we're going to go to Mr. Bob Fuchs on item number 5. If you could just identify yourself for the record, sir, and you have 33 minutes. 33 minutes.
Thank you.
Whatever.
Hi, I'm Bob Fuchs with the Firehouse Brewing Company. There's been a couple of discussions that have gone out on last week with the mayor and outside of this organization. And I'm not exactly sure where we are right at the moment with Roger Brooks's plan and what he's thinking and what is actually being asked for. So along those lines, what I will say is what came of the meeting that we had with the mayor and Jerry Wright was there, we are in support of what Jerry Wright had compromised, so to speak, between the summer nights, what they originally asked for of shutting down Main Street. And basically what it is shutting down 7th Street. Now, I'm not sure if, Jerry, if you're going to go into that later as to what that compromise was. But that would be acceptable to us. I ask that you do not shut down Main Street, or for my fellow business owners downtown, that you do not shut down St. Joe Street. It is detrimental to those of us that are down there and trying to do business down there. And so along that lines, that would be what I'd ask for. And I'm not sure where we are with the exact, what Summer Nights has asked for, if Roger Brooks' plan has changed in any way. I did have myself, I had conversation with Roger Brooks, and he brought up a few other ideas of things that could change in the plan that would also aid the downtown. It would help as far as his plan goes if we could make those things happen. But again, if you would, I'd really like to go with what Jerry Wright had planned, and that we just shut down 7th Street and move the family portion, so to speak, over to the square and to 6th Street adjacent to the square. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fuchs. Next, we'll go to Sandy Schwan on item number 5. Sandy, I believe you know the drill if you just introduce yourself, and you have less than 33 minutes.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you, members of the council. I'm Sandy Schwan. I am the president of Rapid City Summer Nights and a resident of Rapid City. A little over 2 weeks ago, Roger Brooks made his presentation to the council and the public. And since that time, several alternatives have been suggested and brought forth to the Summer Nights team, as well as the idea of forming a committee to attempt to find a consensus. The Summer Nights Board of Directors held discussions on Friday, February 21st. We also consulted with the Rapid City Fire Department, the Rapid City Police Department, and Pennington County Emergency Management. At that time, the board voted to continue with Roger Brooks's plan. Since the Summer Nights Board met last Friday, another alternative has been proposed. However, the board has not had the opportunity to discuss this option. The Board of Directors are, as you all know, volunteers. They have careers, families, and other obligations. One of our members is in Georgia attending a military training. One's on vacation. A couple of them had family emergencies in the last few weeks, and one's a new dad. I can't call a meeting and expect a quorum every 3 days. It's just not fair. It's not an expectation that I should have to put upon my board. I think it's important to point out that while the alternative plans all have merit, all the individuals that have submitted alternative plans, only one has sat down and met with the Summer Nights team, and that's Roger Brooks. He sat down with the team. He asked us what we do, when we do it, why we do it, how we do it, and what we've learned from our past 6 years of experience. He then discussed some of those issues with various downtown business owners, both for and against the event, and he did some research in other communities. And yet it seems as though we have just summarily dismissed his proposal and we're moving on to other ideas. In some ways, it seems like we're now shooting in the dark. The Summer Nights team would like to have the opportunity to try Roger Brooks's plan. We believe his recommendations present a logical, safe, and successful event. And there are some compromises on both sides with Roger Brooks's plan. We'll close the streets as late as we possibly can. We'll work with everyone to try to make sure everyone understands how this is working. But we would like to give Roger Brooks's plan a shot. We'd like to give the council and the city the opportunity to find out if the investment we made in Roger Brooks's research is correct. And the only way we can find out if his research is founded is to try it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Schwan. Up next, we have Mr. Dan Tribby. I think you meant item number 5. You put item number 4, but you wish to speak on Summer Nights. Is that correct, sir? Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Dan Tribby.
I'm Dan Tribby from Prairie Edge. I addressed this a number of times, but just kind of recap my position on this is, again, you know, I think everybody agrees that summer nights can be a wonderful thing. We put out some alternatives. Don't really think that they've been looked at or taken seriously. I know Jerry Wright's put out an alternative. Not sure that was taken serious and really given the consideration. I think that's all we really want is to really take a hard look at the options. You know, when we met with Sandy and discussed those potential options, we agreed at that time that we would look at all those options. An hour later at council, it was pretty much blown off. And you know, if we're going to have a discussion about it, let's have a discussion about it. If it's a foregone conclusion that we're going to do the Roger Brooks thing, then I got way better things to do, you know, than rehashing it. But if we want to have a discussion, and this thing has been discussed for 4 years, how to move it around, there are a lot of people downtown that would love to be part of that conversation, but you know, if that decision is that you're going to close Main Street, just let us know and we'll start figuring out a different way to work this thing. But you know, there's been a lot of discussion amongst business people with summer nights, all the groups involved. How do we make this thing work? But it kind of keeps coming back to, well, we're going to close this street down and run with it. And there are very few people that I've talked to downtown that would not just absolutely love having some summer night somewhere in that core of downtown. I wouldn't want to be in your shoes to have to make that decision, but you know, there are alternatives, and I really, really hope that they all get looked at, because this can be a great event, and it can be a great event going forward. Last time we spoke about what's coming with the promenade. How should downtown be connected with the Civic Center and the Legacy Commons playground? And I understand it's a great deal for summer nights. It's a great deal for downtown Rapid City and the city of Rapid City. It's a moneymaker for Sandy and her crew, and that's wonderful. I mean, the only reason they're making money is because it's successful, which is wonderful for downtown. But are we forgetting to look 2 years down the road? Are we forgetting to look 5 years down the road? If this thing is wonderful now, could it be just absolutely magnificent in 2 or 3 years when this is done? And really, really hope that everybody involved takes a look at the whole thing and lets this thing evolve into what it really could be for not just Rapid City, but for the whole Black Hills area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Up next, we're going to go to Mr. David Asbridge on item number 11. You just identify yourself for the record, sir. You have 3 minutes.
Everybody else got 33.
Yeah, well, my memory's not quite what it used to be.
Good afternoon. I'm David Asbridge. I'm a business owner and citizen of Rapid City. I have been for quite a number of years. Usually I would be speaking on behalf of the Home Builders Association, but I thought best just to approach this human relations ordinance from my standpoint as a businessman, but more importantly as a citizen of Rapid City. As I've read through the ordinance time and time again, something dawned on me very recently about how this would all play out in certain scenarios, and this is what bothers me the worst, and this is going to be the biggest question of the day. There is nothing in this ordinance that describes who can make a claim that they've been discriminated against. In other words, anybody in the United States of America can come to Rapid City and claim that they've been discriminated against by a business within the confines of our city limits. And the question becomes, how does this ordinance serve me as a citizen of Rapid City? Now, if this ordinance said that you have to be a citizen of Rapid City, I could understand it. Don't know if I'd still support it, but I'd understand it. And I think it's foolish of the council to think that it'll only be citizens of Rapid City that take advantage of this commission. I venture to guess that once the word is out, that anybody from anywhere, whether they're a legal citizen of this country or an illegal immigrant, can come to Rapid City and lay claim that they've been discriminated against, valid or not. And that puts a huge burden on our city staff, both from a human standpoint, human resource standpoint, and dollars and cents. And as a taxpayer of Rapid City, I don't know if that's fair to me. So that becomes the question of the day for me. And to the council, I wonder if you were to ask your constituents how they feel about funding this commission as the ordinance is now written, how your constituents would feel. If they feel the same way as I do, if they really knew who this is serving, because I believe that it's very little service to me as a citizen of this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Asbridge. I'll go next to Mr. Jeff Logian at number 11 as well. You have 3 minutes, sir.
All right, thank you. I'm Jeff Loggy, a local business owner in Rapid City and a resident of the Rapid City area. I'm not going to try to rehash on Dave. I think he made a very good point. I'm just going to bring up some issues I had as I've gone through this latest revision on this ordinance. And, you know, number one is still we were, with the original Human Relations Commission, from what we gathered, there was maybe around one case per year that was legitimate. You know, what is this going to do when we're starting to advertise for it and put it out there and like Dave says, you know, all of a sudden it's a tool for somebody to use to basically take advantage of our system. Also, we've had meetings regarding this ordinance and what the role is of the city attorney's office. And really this ordinance doesn't really show how much time will be consumed if there are cases on this that need to have investigations that'll be done by the city attorney's office. Hearing the complaints, helping fill out the forms, you know, that's time taken away from everyday business that the city has. And I've served on plenty of committees down here, and I know how long it takes when you are putting together plans and need the city attorney's office to do background, and it takes time for that review. And I would hate to see normal business interrupted by taking so much of their time, especially on hearing complaints that are frivolous or people just trying to get things off their mind. Again, you know, I don't think it's fair to the taxpayers of the city to foot the bill. Even if this goes into mediation or even beyond that, that is all cost that is borne by the city. And none of that is really spelled out in the ordinance of how much cost this could potentially have. Because nobody knows at this point how many of these could come forward and whether or not this is going to become a political maneuver where maybe this commission denies things and then the phone calls made to you, city council people, or the mayor's office. And, you know, where is this going to go? It's just too close to the city of Rapid City, and I don't think they should be dabbling in this. I think they can continue the Human Relations Commission as it is. I think it's a more positive commission right now. I don't understand why all of a sudden they need power to punish businesses or to be able to do things like this. I think if they inform businesses that there's complaints, I think that's going to set the ball in motion with the business if they know there's somebody unhappy or have an issue with perhaps how they were treated on a service at a restaurant or a hotel or things like that. Also, under the section 2.64060, I still have a lot of issues with the qualifications to be on this committee. I think that really needs to be defined better, and I believe there needs to be an education program spelled into this, and I think there needs to be a system of interviewing candidates to determine that there's no predetermined position on how they're going to treat this committee, that they come in as a
Excuse me, Mr.
impartial.
Luggy. We'd be available for questions later.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
But mostly just come in as an impartial citizen on that.
Sure,
Thank you.
Okay, and that ends the end of our speaker request forms for consent items numbers 5 through 11, or non-consent, excuse me. Does anybody wish to speak on any more of these items that has not turned into a speaker request form? Okay, none appearing. I'm going to close public comment on those items and go directly to item number 5, which is the special event application for Rapid City Summer Nights. And Chair recognizes Jerry Wright.
I make a motion to this be referred to Monday night's council meeting without recommendation, if I may hold the floor after a second to clarify an issue. So.
We have a motion by Wright. Do we have a second? We have a second for discussion by Peterson. Mr. Wright, you still have the floor.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that both Bob and Dan have talked about the compromise I talked about. It's strictly the areas for the members of this committee that are marked in yellow on the map, excluding Main. We would have closed, my recommendation is close 7th Street from Main to St. Joe and close 6th Street from Main north to approximately the alley behind the Prairie Edge, possibly a little further north up into the entrance to the garage. And that's what the proposal I suggested. I just want to let you know that because it's not delineated on that map.
Thank you, Alderman Wright. Chair recognizes Alderwoman Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a substitute motion to move this or continue it for 2 weeks. I have a good reason if I could get a second for discussion. I'll explain either way, but
We have a second for discussion.
yeah, I kind of figured. May I retain the floor?
By all means.
Thank you. Mr. Brooks was one voice and one person giving us a lot of information. Immediately following that meeting, I asked him for the data supporting that presentation. To date, we still have not received that. And I am very reluctant to make a decision of this magnitude when we've had business owners for, how long has it been, Sandy? 8 years now? Year 7? Saying the same things and nothing is getting fixed. And so I think it would be very prudent to look at this data when it's available. We were promised middle of this week. That hasn't happened. I am hopeful that it would be next week at the latest, but I do think that we, in order to be responsible, need to review that data, look at the sources, look at how these things work and are truly reflective of Rapid City. You know, I think there were a lot of assumptions made on the part of Mr. Brooks as to how the data he looked at specifically compared to Rapid City, and we may have other ideas on that. But you know, we keep talking about summer nights being the draw downtown, and when it originated, it certainly was. I remember coming in the earlier years when it was small and quaint, and you know, there was just more of a, to me, more of a connecting feel. But that was before Main Street Square was constructed and completed. And that right now is a huge draw downtown. So I don't think looking at alternatives or potentially having the discussion of moving it is going to kill that atmosphere that everybody seems to like downtown, short of the street closures. I think that you're still going to have that buzz and that excitement and that draw downtown with, especially looking at the calendar that Main Street Square is proposing. It's just a different type of thing. And I would really hate to, I disagree with Brooks's suggestion on keeping it on Main, because I think having 2 stages that close together will actually take away from the substantial investment that this city has made into Main Street Square. And I would just I would like a little more time. And one thing that keeps getting forgotten is that this council did not hire Mr. Brooks to look at this issue. Somebody else did, hired Mr. Brooks to look at this issue, and now this information is being dumped in our lap, but we don't have the full report yet. So I think it's a little premature to make that decision without the full report. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Alderman Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. I was hoping that we'd have a motion to move forward with the Roger Brooks footprint since we had the presentation, and he gave us all of the data. He gave us everything. He told us where they went. He told us what cities they went to. He told us how many cities, and we had that presentation. And I think if you want to see that data, you should go watch that because that meeting's been recorded. Now, I don't know specifically what data we need to see, but the fact of the matter is we've had this for 7 years, and it's been downtown. It's been extremely successful. Now, I don't know about everybody's business, but let me say this much. I don't know where you would have the opportunity, if you had a business downtown, to be exposed to 10 to 12,000 people, whatever the number will be this year. Maybe it will be larger than that this year, and be exposed to that number of people without paying for it. Now, some probably are thinking, well, we do pay for it because I'm losing business, but I'm just wondering, has the annual revenues of all the businesses downtown gone up since summer nights, or have they gone down? Overall, not just Thursday nights during the summer, but I'm saying overall, since summer nights started, your annual revenues, have they gone down or have they gone up? I think that's something we all need to think about. I don't run a business downtown, and I don't profess to say I'm a professional at all, but I do know that we had a professional give us a very in-depth study of what he thought would be best for this celebration, and it's already extremely successful. And I think we need to pull back on the politics, and I think we need to approve it for this 1 year and see where it goes. We'll tweak it next year if we need to tweak it, but it's my understanding even the Roger Brooks footprint has already got some tweaks in it. First National Bank had some concerns, and I think the Summer Nights group was going to accommodate that. They're going to shut down the parking later, so there's been a lot of accommodations. We don't even know what kind of impact that's going to have on business because there's already people coming in saying before it's ever happened, it's not going to work. We got to think a little larger than that. We all know it's successful. We all agree that it's good for the downtown, at least from my understanding. And I think what we need to do is pull back a little bit with all of our individual interests and biases and say, okay, they're tweaking it again, and understand that they're tweaking it again. We're going to close that parking down later. Let's see what it does. Is it going to help me? Is it going to help me a little bit more on Thursday nights? And maybe think a little more globally other than just the Thursday night. And what are the things that I can do to include my business in this Roger Brooks footprint? When I get 10, 12,000 people downtown, am I getting my business involved so that I can drum up business for other nights when the Thursday night deal isn't running? Am I handing out coupons? I don't know. I mean, I'm a business marketing major, but I've never worked in it. But the fact of the matter is, it's an opportunity. Now, whether you're taking advantage of that opportunity every Thursday night to increase your business overall, annually, because of Thursday nights, maybe that's a question we all need to ask ourselves. But I think we've got an expert here who knows what he's talking about. I'm not saying that he knows everything, but the fact of the matter is they've made compromises in this particular footprint. So let's see what it does. Let's give it a year, and we'll tweak it again next year if we need to. But we're already trying to tweak what's already been changed, and we haven't even seen how that's worked. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I say, let's go with what we've been proposed to us by a person who has done a tremendous amount of study. There have been adjustments made to it, and let's see what it does. And then next year, let's come back again, and let's make some more additional tweaks if we need to. Let's make this the best that we can, but making it smaller is not what we want to do. We want to make this thing larger. We want 15, 20, 30. Somebody said 50,000 people. Yeah, that's ultimately what I'd like to see this thing grow to. But we're not going to do it by shrinking it. We're not going to do it by breaking up the footprint, because then it becomes a public safety issue. And that's part of the other the Roger Brooks footprint. It was safe. And so I'm hoping that when we get to the council meeting, that we can pull back on all of our self-interest and let's say, you know what? Let's try this. Let's see what it does. We haven't had this before. This is the 7th year, Sandy? Let's see what this new footprint does with the tweaks and the compromises with the parking. Let's see what it does. And then next year, let's come back and let's tweak it again if we need to. But let's not say it's a failure already when we haven't even tried it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Laurenti. Up next, we'll go to Jerry Wright.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to clarify the exhibit before us, and I don't know, Paul, if you can pull it up on the screen for the audience, but to clarify the map before us, the blue-green area, in addition to the yellow, is the Roger Brooks footprint, and the compromise, I would call it, that was reached after agenda review this week was an amended Roger Brooks footprint where the section of Main west of 7th Street would not be closed, and the section on 7th Street north of Main would not be closed, and basically half or so of the intersection of Main and 7th would be left open for turning traffic, just so that's clear on that exhibit. That's not exactly, that's what came out of the meeting Tuesday or Monday morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Wright. Up next is Charity Doyle.
Thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit about this marketing comment that keeps coming up about having 10 to 12,000 people downtown. I know on its surface it sounds good. And I know when I was doing marketing, a blanket approach, it might work for some businesses, but it's not going to work for most businesses. When most businesses do any kind of advertising, it's very specific and it's targeted, or you're just going to waste your advertising dollars. So it's the composition of that 10 to 12,000 people that's going to determine whether that market is beneficial to your particular business. And because of the diversity we have downtown in the business structure, there's no way that 10 to 12,000 people is going to be good for everybody. There's just no way. If it were an entertainment district, probably be an entirely different conversation. But I think it's very, it saddens me that we keep also mentioning things like self-interest and politics being played. And I can tell you that when business owners downtown tell me that they are hurting because of this, regardless of how I feel about the event, great atmosphere, you've heard the story, I'm not gonna rehash it, but it's not about politics and it's not about self-interest. And you know, it's about taking these business owners at their word and not calling them liars and not pretending that we know better than they do when they're doing this thing day in and day out. And you know, to date, those business owners are not being brought to the table. Their voice is falling on deaf ears. And we're in a situation where this government, this council, is making the decision that makes the playing field downtown unlevel for what we're hearing is half of the businesses downtown. Again, it's not for me to judge what types of businesses go downtown. I'd hate to see us set a policy that says, you know, only if you're in these particular types of industries can you be downtown because we're going to keep investing in it. I wish it was a win for everybody, but the data that we're getting is that it's not. And so far, there has not been a viable solution that is working for everybody. Mr. Brooks even said it. You know, of the 40 he looked at, 12 got moved out of downtown because they weren't working. And, you know, 2 of those lasted, and that's great. But I think the advice he gave to some of our business owners, where if your product or service isn't good enough for somebody to walk 3 or 4 blocks to your salon or your shoe store or whatever the deal is, I think we can apply that same thing to Summer Nights. If your product or service isn't good enough for people to follow you across the street, then there's an issue. Everybody I've talked to, would you still support it if it got moved across the street? Absolutely, yes. We love Summer Nights. We go every Thursday. And I haven't had one person say to me, nope, Charity, I would not follow it to Memorial Park because it's a park. No, we just love the bands. We love the atmosphere. We love what they've done. And, you know, we ask businesses in Rapid City to sink or swim on their own merit. We leave their streets open, but we ask them to sink or swim. We don't get involved. We don't upset the apple cart. We don't unlevel the playing field for them. But we're not giving the same consideration to Summer Nights. Could they sink or swim on their own merit? We're not even exploring that opportunity. And again, because we didn't hire Mr. Brooks to give us this, but yet at the end of the day, the city is paying for a study for Summer Nights. I find it frustrating that once again, I think the answer would have been different had the business owners that perceive or feel or have valid data that they're being hurt would have hired Mr. Brooks for the study. We all know how consultants work, if you've ever hired them, if you've ever worked for them. And I think there's a lot of things that keep getting missed, and I'm tired of business owners, the people who do this day in and day out and have their livelihood on the line, being dismissed. That's my concern. And we've been doing it for years. Yeah, we'll listen to you next year. Oh, wait, no, next year. Sorry, year after that. And it just keeps going. When are we going to listen? Or are we going to set a policy that only if you have a certain business that's going to thrive in this atmosphere can you be downtown? I mean, just think about the message that that's sending. And I think, to be fair, there were some questions that council members had based on Mr. Brooks's data. And if it is sound information, I think we might be willing to give it a try without, well, it's not self-interest or playing politics. It's just being informed. And I'm not ready to make a decision on that with the data that I have to date. I want to see the report. I want to read it. And, that's me. I'm one of 10. And I guess I'm the one who's going to be listening to the people that say they're hurting. So I yield.
Chair recognizes Jerry Wright. The motion on the floor is to send to council without recommendation.
Correct. I was not going to say much today. I was going to hold it all for Monday night, but I think with the discussion that's occurred at the dais today, I do ask that everybody that's in attendance today and on this dais, let's remember that what Summer Nights has done for downtown Rapid City. It brought life back that wasn't there before. It brought the attention of the downtown to people that probably had hardly ever been down there. There's been exposure to businesses, even though they may be closed at the time or not applicable to this night, that have had exposure, and it's been rough edges. I think we just need to remember the value that Summer Nights and the positives that Summer Nights has brought to Rapid City, in particular to the downtown. The citizens of Rapid City, for the most part, have re-identified themselves with their community, and that's so important that we got to be careful we don't kill it. And I think we need to work out what will work safely, what will handle the crowds safely, and do the minimal damage that we can do to everybody, of course, and help everybody benefit from it. That's the goal, and that's all I'm going to say. But let's, over the next few days, today's Wednesday, we come back Monday night for the Monday night fight, I guess we'll call it, or whatever you want to call it, and we'll be debating it. And I think we do need to resolve it by that night because there's plans that need to be made. But let's be thinking about what the positive impact it has, and let's talk about some of the things that have caused problems, and can we compromise? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Once again, the motion is to move the council without recommendation. Do I have any further discussion? None appearing. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? One nay vote from Doyle. Motion carries. Up next is item number 6. Authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign amended developers agreement with President's Plaza and entertain a motion to continue this item for 2 weeks. Motion by Wright, second by Peterson. Any further discussion? Is it 2 weeks? That's correct. That's what we decided on? Okay. Any further discussion? Legal and finance? Okay, so the next two, what year is that? Okay, so March 11th, Legal and Finance Committee. March 12th, okay. All right. Yeah, any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7, second reading and recommendation of ordinance 5984 to authorize the chief of police or designee to issue special event and parade permits by amending section 12.020 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. And Chair recognizes Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. If I can, I'd like to ask the Chief of Police a question.
By all means.
Chief Ellender, can you just kind of give a brief summary? What's the change so people know? I know this was on the last City Council meeting, so if you can just kind of give us a summary of what the change is and what your opinion is on it. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. The obvious change that you can see in black and white is that will be on one of these ordinances, removing the 70 float requirement on parades. That's an easy one. The other is to allow administrative approval for all special event permits, whereas now we filter some through the council. Last year, of 81 permits that were approved in the city, we sent 17 to the city council for approval, and that doesn't include summer nights. We send them here because it's specific to parking or will close a major right-of-way or is in some other way high profile, and we've thought you've needed the heads up on that, and that's why we've sent them. So I see it as a way to streamline the process, and we do have an internal reporting system that we could include the council on to keep you informed of the upcoming events, all 81 of them, or however many we have this year. But I'll guarantee you right now, this is not a ploy to try to sneakily approve something like summer nights behind your backs. There is a check and balance for that, including the council taking action against against people like me. So I hope that answered your question.
It does, and you hit the nail on the head. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't some thinking that I just got wind of that from the last council meeting, that this was some sort of way to not keep us informed, and that they're trying to sneak something in that we would typically want to be involved in. So I support it. I definitely support the fact that it's going to streamline the process. We haven't had issues with this. I don't, Chief, can you, of the ones that typically come to us, have we ever had major issues with those, or have those been typically just 2 readings and it's approved?
Correct. I think the most discussion we've ever had has been on like the Elks Theater, free parking for senior citizens, or an arts festival or something of that nature. But in all those cases, we've found an easy way to resolve them and accommodate the events.
One last question. Would there be anything that would, in your mind, if we put this on your office, is there anything that would be a trigger that would necessarily bring an approval back to the council in your mind? I mean, would there be something going, well, you know what, maybe we should run this one back to council? I mean, there isn't a trigger really built into this change where?
It doesn't seem that there's an obvious trigger in the system. I mean, obviously we're going to send major reoccurring events like summer nights to the council. I don't know if there are others that would meet that general criteria.
Okay, thank you.
Chair recognizes Alderman Jerry Wright.
2 questions, Chief. One is the definition of size on the events. I mean, that's not as near as important as I see. The other one is routing and review by other departments as appropriate. And the other one, the one that really bothers me is even in the summer nights permit application, it says, have affected businesses been notified, and it's marked as yes, and I've had repeated calls that they weren't contacted. So before I can vote for this ordinance, I want some assurance within the ordinance that they're duly contacted, and you know they've been contacted. Is that fair?
Well,
I mean, it might be a first-class letter with a mailing list. I don't know.
I understand what you're saying. I don't think I can guarantee that the information on the permit is going to be accurate or truthful. We'll look it over for obvious red flags, and there's a lot of planning on our part that goes into accommodating a large event, especially one that will take away people's parking spaces or use of a street for a period of time. And so part of our planning process would be to question the applicant and make sure they've contacted them and so on.
Well, due process, would it be fair to say that part of this ordinance, and I think I asked for it, would be that would be verified and that could be defined somehow? I see one of our attorneys is here, like you do with the use on review or a zoning request or a lot of things that basically, I don't know if we need a certified return receipt or if we need just a list of first-class mailing or something that would say we have, this applicant has done a reasonable job of trying to contact the people on Main Street in St. Joe, or whatever. I would like to see that in the ordinance before I vote for it. Is that a big deal?
Well, I think it's a question for the city attorney, and I don't want to put our staff in the position of doing a door-to-door canvass to make sure everyone's been
I don't
contacted.
think you need to do that. I think they have to, it says here, have affected business been notified, and they check it, yes. Simply, I'd say on their permit, it would be attached either their mailing list or some other documentation that they've contacted. Maybe even a copy of an email. I don't know. It's not up to you to do it. They just provide it with the permit application.
Excuse me, if I could, gentlemen, I see Allison is at the dais, maybe, or the podium. Could you please address some of those concerns for Mr. Wright?
Yes, if I may, Mr. Chair. Regarding the type of notification that you're requesting, I think the current version of Chapter 1220 would probably not accommodate that. The time frame within which the applicants need to provide their information to the Chief of Police is at least 15 days before their event. So if they don't have all of that in place, they're not going to get their approval in the time frame that they need. Now, obviously, a group the size of Summer Nights comes in, their planning starts a year ahead of time, and they're going to be able to accommodate that more. But probably the senior night at the Elks or some of these other events, I'm not sure the way the ordinances, the other sections of Chapter 1220 are written would accommodate what you're requesting. But certainly if staff would be directed to bring forward other ordinance amendments regarding special event permit application process, we would do that.
Well, that's my suggestion, but if you don't, I don't know if I'm going to direct you to do that. But if we get a firestorm a year from now for the National Elephant Parade or something like that, and then someone's upset about it, let's make sure we've been notified, or whatever it's going to be, okay? I'm just concerned that I've had enough pushback from the Summer Nights, which I support, but business saying, no, we weren't contacted. And I think that's a big deal. It may not be. Go ahead, Chief.
I think it's kind of important to realize that with the routine parades we have downtown, those business owners are probably notified by the newspaper or by their calendar that says they're getting another parade down their street. And the typical permit that we're talking about here is the Bloodmobile setting up on some side street and taking up 4 parking places,
Okay.
and so on. So they're all very small and very routine generally.
Okay, I've said my piece, so I'll just.
I currently do not have a motion on the floor. Does anybody wish to make a motion for this item so we can dispose of it?
7 and 8, I'd make a motion to approve.
There's a motion to dispose of items 7 and 8 concurrently. A motion to approve. Do I have a second? Approve 7 and 8. Yeah, second by Laurenti. A motion by Wright, second by Laurenti for items 7 and 8 to be considered together. And approval. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, moving on to item number 9. I need to read, excuse me, Joel, do I need to read that into the record since we just approved it with number 7? Do we need to consider that item separately?
Well, I think, yeah, you just need to identify it, but actually the title of the ordinance for purposes of the statute are read at the actual council
Okay.
meeting, not at the committee meeting.
Just want to make sure procedurally we were correct. Okay. Moving on to item number 9 then. Second reading of and recommendation of ordinance 5982, amending definition of structural alteration within the sign code to permit maintenance of existing signs by amending section 17.50.080 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. And
Second.
have moved and approved by Laurenti, second by Wright. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Item number 10, second reading of recommendation of ordinance 5981, amending certain provisions in the Rapid City Municipal Code, chapter 15.48, concerning licenses for manufactured home parks.
Move to approve.
Motion by Laurenti, second by Wright to approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 11, second reading and recommendation of ordinance 5964 to revise the powers, duties, and process of the Human Relations Commission by amending chapter 2.64 of the Rapid City Municipal Code.
Move to approve.
Motion approved by Laurenti, second by Wright, and Chair recognizes Charity Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wade, did you get my email? And we didn't have an opportunity to ask about it, but is it something that you would be prepared for me to question you on today?
Sure.
Okay. The like Mr. Asbridge and Mr. Laggy, we're at the second reading. So if this goes through Monday, it's done. And, you know, I try to look at the whole context above and beyond the intent. Now, the intent is fine. The intent is noble, I believe. But I believe the ordinance is still significantly flawed. And one of the questions that I proposed to Wade was, we look a lot at, and I think, Mr. Laggy, you made a comment about the composition of the committee. We talk about the committee to the extent of it being diverse, Wade, but we don't talk about the character, what kinds of diverse people would be making these decisions, and it's particularly important in lieu of the fact that we don't have a training requirement. And I mean, most people know, even city council members, the mayor, I guess the mayor has the power to administer an oath, but we don't have the power to compel. We don't have the power to take on a lot of these roles, and yet we're asking a citizen commission to do that without training. And unless we have a provision that they're all attorneys, most likely citizens aren't going to have that kind of training. So was there any thought throughout these iterations given to the more detailed composition of, and I know we do that on a lot of other boards, based on the industry and the different industries that might feed into, let's say, the Civic Center or the airport or different things. Did we do that for this? And could we do that for this?
I would say, I know it's been discussed, the qualifications, the composition of the commission, stressing diversity, possibly. There was talk of doing or requiring one tribal member, or setting numbers in it, but the commission, I guess, decided against that, as did the mayor. As far as can we
Or what about background checks? I mean, I know that doesn't.
Background checks?
We do. Could we do it, or we do it?
We don't do it.
Okay.
I think we probably could. I'd want to look at that a little more, but my gut feeling is we could do a.
Could you take a look at that by Monday?
Yeah.
I have some other questions as well.
Sure.
In it, it's talking about a mediator for potential issues. How much have we budgeted for that? Would it fall under your department?
The Human Relations has a small budget line item. I'm not sure the amount. $1,000 maybe.
Is that sufficient?
That's the $64,000 question, but in what we've looked at, if we continue with the same number of complaints, the same types of complaints that we've gotten, I don't see an issue with needing a supplement either to our office or to Human Relations. That's not to say that we couldn't get a dozen complaints a day for a month, and obviously that would change things. When we looked at it, basically with the amount of complaints, the volume that we've had in the past, and in talking to my counterpart in Sioux Falls, taking their volume of complaints and saying roughly half of that if we're half the size. Either way, I think we're covered. It shouldn't be a situation where we'd have to supplement our budget or Human Relations.
I would hope that you've taken into account the advertising campaign that has been ongoing for this, and that it does take time to build up and then hit that mass where it is producing a different result than when the original decision was made. So I'm wondering how much thought was given to that fact and that element, because it could be a game changer, it might not be. I mean, we don't know, but we often as a city do these things and kind of jump into them in good faith without really planning for them, and then depend upon extra sales tax dollars to bail us out of these decisions and supplement the budget.
Well, there's a public service announcement that has run a few different times. I'm not sure. It's not, I don't know that I'd characterize it as an advertising campaign just because it was donated by Mid-Continent. They put it together. They've sent it out and they've run it in, I don't know, they run it a month or 2 months at a time on their cable system, and they've given it to Knowledge or Wow and to the local radio stations, that sort of thing. And I don't know that there's any set amount of time they put in the rotation. It's sort of
At their discretion?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then one other thing, I see that the complainant shall have the right to dismiss the complaint at any time prior to the commencement of the hearing. Of course, that brings to mind for me the potential to use it as a tool for disgruntled people to get back at their employer or an establishment, have them incur the cost of an attorney or some kind of defense or time, resources, whatever, some kind of a cost. Was there any consideration given to the complainant being on the hook if it's found or suspected that this is being used as a tool for that? I mean, what kind of protection does the respondent have that this is not going to be just some kind of, I can't think of the right word, but I think you catch my meaning.
No, I understand. I don't know that there was at least a real serious discussion about putting the complainant on the hook. In the regard of if this is used as a weapon, really more just to get at somebody. There are, one of the purposes of the commission, and that's I guess would be a carryover from what's in the ordinance now, is that the commissioners are tasked with, one of the purposes is to investigate, identify discrimination, and the other is to guard against businesses being unfairly
singled out
targeted.
or accused.
So, with the requirement for impartiality and one of the purposes of the commission being that side of things, that's really where that emphasis was placed, at least within the ordinance structure.
And how do we guarantee that impartiality? What kind of measures or checks and balances do we have in place to make sure that the commission as a whole is impartial? I mean, is it something that the city attorney's office is policing, or is it self-policing? Is there any kind of process that do we just let them go, or do we keep an eye on it,
Well, I would say I attend all of their meetings, so I mean, there's staff there, I guess, at the very least. The real, I guess, the check or the balance would be the power of the council to remove a commissioner if they were viewed as impartial.
Is it the council or is it the mayor?
It's actually the way it's included in the ordinance. I can see if I can point to the specific section. I added a section about that. It's 2.64.085, and it's basically the mayor with the confirmation of the council.
Okay, so the mayor, okay. So we could suggest something, the mayor's blessing, then it would be heard by council, is what I'm hearing.
Right.
Okay. All right, well, I think that, obviously I don't think it's full and complete right now to make sure that the intent that it's being brought forward with matches the result. And that's my concern. I think there are a few holes where that intent could be, it could easily morph into something else. But I would also like to see a provision that commissioners may not solicit cases, because I think it would be an albatross really to set up that conflict of interest and potentially keep them from, I mean, it lends itself to that impartiality issue. And because I've been told by people that have been solicited that that's happening, only 2 people, but still that it's happened from existing commissioners, I think we need to just look out for that. So is that something that can be added by Monday?
Yeah, I can bring you some language.
All right, thank you very much, Wade. I yield.
Motion is to move to council with approval. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're now adjourned.